Over in Acts chapter 22, listen to what Paul says about his life before Christ. This is Acts chapter 22, verse 1. Paul says, "Brethren and fathers, hear my defense before you now." And when they heard that he spoke to them in the Hebrew language, they kept all the more silent. Then he said, "I am indeed a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city in Jerusalem at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous toward God, as you all are today. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering into prisons both men and women, as also the high priest bears me witness, and all the council of the elders, the Sanhedrin, from whom I also received letters to the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring in chains even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished." Paul says that I was zealous toward God. And Paul was so zealous toward God that he persecuted the church. And he thought he was doing service to God by persecuting the church and by rounding up Christians and arresting them and even killing them. He had a zeal, a fervency, but it was misguided zeal. He was wrong in what he believed. But he was zealous, he was passionate. Over in Galatians chapter 1, again, Paul says of himself, this is Galatians chapter 1, verse 13, "For you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure, and I tried to destroy it." That's zeal. That's zeal. "And I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my father." Paul was zealous beyond measure. He persecuted the church of God. He tried to destroy it himself, to put an end to Christianity. He was exceedingly zealous for the traditions of the Jewish fathers, of Judaism. Paul was zealous to defend Judaism against what he perceived as the threat of the church, the threat of Christianity. But again, it's a misguided zeal. Now, after Paul's conversion to Christ, he was still zealous, right? He was still just as, it was the same. It's not like, became a Christian and then he totally chilled out. He was still just as zealous. Now he's just zealous for the right thing. Right? And for some of you, maybe you were super zealous for something before you were saved, and you were a fanatical about it. Just a fanatic. And now be zealous for Jesus. Be zealous for Jesus. Paul was zealous for Jesus after his conversion, but now he had a zeal according to correct knowledge of Jesus Christ. His zeal was in line with the truth as opposed to a zeal that opposes the truth. Israel, on the other hand, Israel's zeal was not in line with the truth. Many Israelites today are very zealous for God. I think in particular of Orthodox Jews, for example. Very, very zealous. They have a fervor for God. They have a devotion to God. But it's not according to a correct knowledge of God, because they've rejected Jesus Christ. And you look at the zeal that many Jews have today, it's both admirable and heartbreaking to see their zeal for God. It's admirable because they are so devoted. They're devoted to prayer, they're devoted to keeping the rules, they're devoted to the Sabbath day and not breaking the Sabbath. And so it's admirable to see that kind of devotion, and at the same time, it's heartbreaking because it's not according to knowledge. They rejected Jesus as their Messiah. They don't have a correct knowledge of God. But they're zealous. Just to give you one example of their zeal, every morning when an Orthodox Jew wakes up, when they first open their eyes, before getting out of bed or beginning any conversation or activity, the moment they wake up, they declare their gratitude to God and resolve to serve the Creator that day, and they recite a prayer. This is the prayer they pray as soon as they wake up. I want you to think about what you do as soon as you wake up, as soon as you open your eyes. As soon as they open their eyes, they pray, I gratefully thank you, O living and eternal King, for you have returned my soul within me with compassion. Abundant is your faithfulness. That's how they start every day. With that beautiful prayer of gratitude before their feet hit the floor. How many of us here pray a prayer of gratitude as soon as we open our eyes in the morning? I'm not saying that to like convict you or anything. I'm just saying they've got a zeal that most of us don't have. They have a commitment, a devotion that many of us don't have. If you go to Israel today and you go to the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, and there are always Jews there praying with zeal, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are always Jews there praying. In fact, if you go there in the middle of the night, they're there. And they have like kind of understood rule. If you are the only Jew at the wall praying, you're not allowed to leave until someone else shows up. So that someone is always there praying. And so if you go there at 3 o'clock in the morning, there might be one person left there at the wall praying, and they will stay there until somebody else shows up, and then they'll walk away, right? But there's a zeal there that we don't really have. Right? Just a commitment, a devotion that they have. And you'll see them there with their prayer books and their phylacteries and their prayer shawl on. And they're there and they're praying and they're calling out to God with a loud voice, praying out to Him. There's a zeal. There's a zeal.